Yo, what's up? Welcome back to another episode of the SWUS. We're on to Friday night, college football week 11. We got 3 games on, and they're good ones, too. I mean, we got some great football on Friday night. As far as Thursday night, we've got 2 games starting right now. I'm recording this around 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. We've got 2 games starting right now and an NFL game starting. I have nothing open right now. I couldn't find anything I like tonight. I might throw something on the Raiders. I still got like 20 minutes to kick off. I might put something on the Raiders for fun, but nah, nothing down for me Thursday night. But yeah, let's get on to Friday. 3 great college football games. Let's talk about it. I mean, is Cooper Rush worth 2.5 points? I would hope Quinn Ewers put up a decent stat line against Arizona State. If he didn't, we have a real problem.
You can say the same thing about Creighton. Okay, they had the one good game against Kansas at home.
When Toast talks about the kicking market, it's like some earth is flat shit. Andy, true or false, this is going to be a dog walking.
Dog walking. This is my dog walking of the day. I think it's going to be very ugly. Dog walking. I think this is going to be ugly.
Hey, get the sauce. Houston's on the road in the bounce house. Houston coming off a 45-35 loss. Looks like Rich Rodriguez finally got his offense running. I mean, despite all the injuries. Remember, they're missing star running back, a couple of receivers. They're on like their 3rd or 4th quarterback. This West Virginia offense has been through the ringer. But 45 points last week on the road at Houston. Now, the final score is a little misleading. West Virginia played a good game offensively, but 46.2% success rate, 5.37 yards per play. They played a good game offensively. The 45 points, I mean, Houston gifted them 4 turnovers. One was a pick 6. West Virginia scored 17 points off turnovers. So it was a good game offensively for West Virginia, but the 45 points is a little bit misleading here. That loss really hit Houston right in the mouth, drops them to 4-2 in conference. Now, they're still mathematically alive here. BYU, Texas Tech, and Cincinnati obviously all sit atop the conference, but BYU and Texas Tech are about to play Saturday. BYU also still has to play Cincinnati, and Cincinnati also has to go to TCU still. So, look, they're not mathematically out of it. They are still alive. They still do have a chance to play in the Big 12 championship game, but that West Virginia loss definitely hurt. Now, you might be thinking, well, they're playing UCF. That's one of the lower teams in the Big 12. This should be a winnable game for Houston. Well, you got to keep in mind that these 2 teams have a history. Remember, these 2 teams were in Conference USA together back in 2005. Then they both switched over to the American Conference in 2013. And then they both moved to the Big 12 together in 2023. So even though it's been in 3 different conferences, Houston and UCF have been conference rivals for 20 years now, and UCF's gotten the better of them. Houston just 3-8 lifetime against UCF. That's all since 2005. Just 1-5 lifetime in the bounce house. They've only won 1 game here ever, and on top of that, it's Space U night. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, UCF is affiliated with NASA in some way, which is ironic because you would think that would be Houston. But no, UCF is affiliated with NASA, and every year they do a Space U game where they wear space-themed uniforms. Now, you might be thinking, who cares? Who cares what uniform they're wearing? And I mean, for the most part, I agree with you. It is interesting, though. UCF has never lost on Space Night. They're 8-0, outscoring opponents, get this, 415-159. So UCF has never, ever lost on Space Night. Every time they've thrown on the Space jerseys, they've won, and they've beaten the hell out of teams on Space Night. So at first glance, you take a look at this game, and you're like, UCF, this should be a nice winnable game for Houston. But then you take into consideration that Houston has historically struggled against UCF. You take into consideration they're wearing wild space uniforms, and they've never lost in them. They're in the bounce house where they've been much better. And that's another thing. They're playing UCF in their toughest environment. And I'm not just referring to the bounce house. I'm also referring to a healthy Taven Jackson at quarterback. They've played 4 home games with Taven Jackson at quarterback this year. In those games, they're averaging 41 points per game, over 7.2 yards per play. So when Taven Jackson is healthy and at quarterback, UCF's offense has looked pretty damn good at home. So up to this point, you're probably thinking, UCF's offense might go off here. And maybe they will. It's kind of tough to unsee what we just saw last week, because Taven Jackson didn't just come back. He was back last week as well, and offensive tackle Paul Rubel also came back last week, although he only played 23 snaps. So they were healthy last week. They had the quarterback, they had a starting offensive lineman back. They went on the road to play Baylor, who is not a defense that should give you problems, although credit to Baylor, they are playing slightly better defensively the last few games, but this is not a defense that should give you problems. They were terrible. 4.02 yards per play, success rate under 30%. They were held to 3 points in the game. They were held to 225 yards of offense. 225 yards of offense against Baylor. 4 punts, 3 turnover on downs, a missed field goal, and 2 interceptions. So although there are a lot of aspects of this matchup I like for UCF's offense, it's kind of tough to unsee that. They were terrible offensively last week against Baylor. Now, that was on the road. They're back home in the bounce house, and I personally think UCF's going to look much better offensively. I mean, Houston's defense has been pretty good this year, but it hasn't been impenetrable. They don't look elite. So I personally think UCF's offense does bounce back. I'm sure Scott Frost will have something schemed up. So I'm not expecting him to put up 40 points, but I think UCF will get the ball in the end zone a few times. Now, on the other side of the ball, this is where the matchup gets interesting because you look at this graphic, the year-long stats between the Houston offense and the UCF defense, you would think, UCF's going to lock this down. I mean, 106th in success rate, 106th in PPA per play for Houston's offense, 43rd and 31st for UCF's defense. So you might think, this is a really tough matchup for Houston's offense. This is a little misleading on both sides. Houston's offense is playing better. UCF's defensive numbers are a little bit padded. This Central Florida team has played a lot of games against some really bad offenses. If you isolate it to just their games against respectable offenses, that's Kansas State, Kansas, Cincinnati, Baylor, their defensive numbers don't look nearly as good. They're allowing over 6.1 yards per play, over 44% success rate, 27.8 points allowed per game. They've also lost 3 starting defensive linemen in the last 3 or 4 weeks. Edge rusher Sincere Edwards is still out. Defensive tackle Horace Lockett is still out. And defensive tackle Derek LeBlanc, although he's questionable to return, he's been out as well. So in my opinion, this UCF defense is not nearly as good as their year-long numbers show. They're also pretty injured. And when it comes to Houston's offense, they look terrible earlier in the season. Remember, I was talking about how their final scores of their games were misleading. Well, they've completely turned it around. Because in the last 4 games, Houston's offense is playing their best football of the year right now. 32.3 points per game, over 47% success rate, over 5.8 yards per play. Connor Wegman is playing the best football of his entire career right now. I know he threw a couple of interceptions last week, but in his last 4 games, he's been extremely efficient. Houston's done a great job keeping him protected in the pocket. When he has seen pressure, he's handling it well. Connor Wegman's playing the best football of his career right now. The Houston offense looks great. So I think Houston's offense is going to move the ball on UCF. I think UCF's offense bounces back after their worst game of the season last week against Baylor. I like both offenses to move the ball in this one. Let's go over. 47.5. I haven't bet this one, but just been sitting at 47. I see a flat 47. Yeah, I think I'm going to bet this. Give me over 47. I kind of lean towards Houston, or at least I did originally. But the Space Night and the historic rivalry, I'm good. Bounce House is going to be going crazy for this one. So just give me the over, 47.5. Tulane's on the road at Memphis in what has become the most exciting Group of 5 conference in college football. Last week, heading into the UTSA game, we were talking about how Tulane's playing with fire, right? They needed a fourth quarter comeback to beat ECU. They needed a fourth quarter comeback to beat Army. And we were kind of like, this Tulane team doesn't look very strong. They're not going to keep winning these games if they're playing like this. Well, the dam finally broke because they got smoked by UTSA at the Alamo Dome. 48-26 was the final score of that game. And now they better get it together quickly because now they're going on the road to Memphis, who vibes are pretty high with Memphis in their last 2 games. They come off the huge upset win over South Florida, and then everybody, including myself, kind of assumed week 10 going on the road to play a lowly Rice team. That was going to be a flat spot for Memphis. Rice runs the option, kind of a tricky matchup. They were up 28-0 almost immediately in that game against Rice. So vibes are high here with Memphis, and vibes are not so high with this Tulane team. Now, they should get up for this one because this is a revenge game. If you remember, Memphis kind of ruined the season for Tulane last year. If you remember last year, going into week 14, the last game of the season, Tulane's name was being thrown around with Boise State as a possible college football playoff team. They lose outright to Memphis. Now, they went on to lose the conference championship game to Army anyway after that, but the kind of the knockout punch to Tulane's playoff hopes was delivered by Memphis, and they were heavy favorites in that game. Tulane was. Memphis, it wasn't the best year for Memphis last year. So definitely a revenge spot for Tulane. They remember that Memphis kind of shattered their dreams last year in the last game of the season. So North Texas, in all likelihood, is going to finish the year 7-1 in conference. I mean, they have a home game against Temple at UAB. Obviously, anything could happen in this conference. They could lose. But North Texas most likely going to finish the year 7-1 in conference. So if they pick up a second conference loss here, whether it's Memphis or Tulane, it's certainly going to dampen their chances of playing in the conference championship game. That's for sure. So this is a huge game. Now, in terms, let's get into the matchup. Tulane's offense against Memphis defense. Tulane's offense hasn't really looked that bad. Their problem has been more mistakes than actually struggling to move the chains. On the season, they're 43rd in success rate, 58th in PPA per play. The Memphis defense, 46th and 68th. So on the season, these two units are pretty even. If you look at the last 3 games, and these are the 3 games we're talking about, right? Tulane almost lost to Army, almost lost to ECU, got killed by UTSA. So these are the 3 games we're referring to. Tulane's offensive numbers, in terms of efficiency, they look fine. Averaging over 7.1 yards per play, 50% success rate, over 25 points per game. Like I said before, the story for Tulane's offense in those 3 games was more mistake-driven than struggling to move the football. I mean, Jake Retzlaff did not play good in the last game. He threw 2 interceptions, and they took him out, and Brendan Sullivan came in and actually went up and down the field a couple times. I will say, when Sullivan came in, UTSA was up 38-12. So they might have been sitting back in coverage. It's tough to take the stats from late in the game like that seriously. I mean, UTSA was probably sitting back in cover 6, and Sullivan was just picking them apart. I'm not really sure on that. The point I'm making is I don't believe Retzlaff's job is in jeopardy because of that. And we don't want to forget, look, it's been a rough year for Retzlaff. The Tulane offense has been mostly driven by the ground game, and he's used his legs. So he's done well as an athlete. In terms of throwing the football, hasn't been the best year for Retzlaff. That being said, entering last week's game against UTSA, he was coming off back-to-back efficient games throwing the football. I mean, a 116.7 NFL passer rating, 304 passing yards per game. So entering that UTSA game where he looked bad, he was playing his most efficient football of the year in terms of throwing the ball. So I suppose that's a good sign. And honestly, we all remember the blowout against Rice. We all remember, when we're talking about Memphis now, we all remember the blowout against Rice, and we all remember the huge upset win over South Florida. But let's not pretend like everything's awesome with this Memphis defense. Sure, they shut down Rice. They run an option offense. In the 2 games before that, this defense didn't look all that great. I mean, Byron Brown had all day to throw in that South Florida game. And if you watch the game, remember, Memphis won the 4th quarter 17-0. They came back from down 2 touchdowns in the 4th quarter. South Florida looked like the better team for 75% of that game, 80% of that game. So South Florida was not having problems moving the ball in this Memphis defense. And the game before that, we've kind of all just forgotten about this. We've put it in the past. Memphis lost outright to UAB with a backup quarterback. They just fired their coach. They had a backup quarterback in. They beat Memphis outright. So a couple games, and we all kind of forget that you rewind 2 weeks ago, we had serious concerns about this Memphis team, specifically on the defensive side of the ball. So I think Tulane's going to move the football in this game. I think Retzlaff bounces back. I don't think Memphis defense is as elite as perceived. Yeah, I think Tulane's going to move the ball in this game. The question comes on the other side of the ball because it's been a disappointing season for Tulane defensively. I will say numbers are probably a little bit skewed. I mean, this team played Duke. That's one of the most explosive offenses in the entire country. They also played Ole Miss, another one of the most explosive offenses in the country. They played Northwestern, still a Power 4 program. So early in the season, Tulane played a very strong schedule. The defense isn't nearly as bad as these numbers indicate, but it certainly hasn't been a great year for Tulane defensively. And Memphis on the offensive side of the ball, I mean, as long as Brendan Lewis is going to play, which is another thing, I think that's why we've seen the line come down. I think he's listed as questionable. He did leave the Rice game limping. He also left the UAB game. He left that game early, and A.J. Hill, the freshman backup, finished it. So I think it's his ankle. Brendan Lewis injury concerns, that's a thing. That's a talking point. We don't know for certain that Brendan Lewis is going to play in this game. And speaking of injuries, Tulane linebacker and team captain Sam Howard, he's missed the last 2 games. He's set to return. So Tulane returning what might be the most important player on their defense. He hasn't been out there the last 2 games. And if you look at Tulane's numbers against the run, they look pretty solid. We're talking about how Tulane looks shaky, how they're almost losing these games, and they got blown out by UTSA. They're not getting gashed on the ground. In their last 3 games against ECU, Army, UTSA, they're allowing just 3.72 yards per carry, 39% success rate per rush. So they've been pretty efficient defending the run. And the final offensive numbers for Memphis in that South Florida game, they look great. I mean, 5.7 yards per play, 46.9% success rate. Remember, they scored 17 points in the fourth quarter and came back from down big. Going into the fourth quarter, they only had 17 points, and they were struggling to move the ball. In fact, there was a section of the game in the first half where they had 5 consecutive punts. So I don't think this graphic really tells the story. We did see Memphis struggle offensively, and if they don't have their quarterback or he's hobbled in any way, because remember, Brandon Lewis is a guy that relies on his athleticism. He's not a pocket passer. I think Tulane could play a solid defensive game, getting their team captain back. I think Tulane's the move. The problem is the number is long gone. I was considering betting Tulane at +7 on Sunday afternoon. It's down to 3.5 now. I can't bet it now. It would be Tulane and under. So that's my pick. My picks for the game are Tulane +3.5, under 54.5. But the number is so long gone. So yeah, I think Tulane could actually win, but I won't be betting it. The number's gone. Northwestern USC out on the West Coast. Both these teams are actually coming off games against Nebraska. The Northwestern game went kind of as expected. I mean, I think they were catching 7.5 there against Nebraska. They ended up losing by a touchdown. The USC game, this is the game that went nothing like I was expecting it. So that game, USC-Nebraska, the total was 59.5, and I was considering betting an over. Final score was 21-17. USC had to come back. They were down, had to come back to win this one, 21-17. So a low-scoring game between USC and Nebraska, just not what I was expecting at all, or not what anyone was expecting. The total was 59.5. So USC gets the big road win, which keeps them alive in the Big Ten conversation, but they do need help. If you look at Indiana's remaining schedule, I mean, they're probably just going to skip into the conference championship game. So you can pretty much pencil Indiana in to the Big Ten championship game. Ohio State. So USC would need Ohio State to lose to Michigan, and then it would get interesting because Big Ten, the Big Ten Conference, their tiebreaker goes by record against common opponents. So if Michigan beats Ohio State, USC beat Michigan. But I mean, USC lost to Illinois. Ohio State beat Illinois. So I don't know the details. It would get interesting if USC is able to win out, which is an if. They still play Washington. They still got some tough games. But if USC is able to win out and Ohio State loses to Michigan, the Big Ten could get interesting. Keep in mind, Oregon's in the conversation as well. So yeah, the Big Ten could get interesting here. USC most definitely alive in the conference. So how do they match up against this Northwestern team? We've got injuries everywhere. So before we get into anything, let's talk about the Northwestern defense against the USC offense. The lead story, injuries. So check this out. I'm going to read my notes here. USC right guard Alani Noah, that's their starting right guard. He was injured in the first quarter of the Nebraska game. It looks like he's going to be out. So USC just lost a starting offensive lineman. This is already an offensive line that's been missing their left tackle Elijah Page and center Killian O'Connor for multiple weeks now. So this was already an injured offensive line. They just lost another starter last week. Now, it looks like they are getting Elijah Page back. That's their freshman left tackle that's been playing. So they might be, well, actually, I shouldn't say it looks like they are. There's a chance they're getting him back. So they might be getting one of those 3 guys back on the offensive line. But USC's offensive line is definitely injured. They've also been playing without both of their running backs, J.J. Jordan and Eli Sanders. They've both missed the last 2 games, and neither is expected back. So they're rocking with their third-string running back, who's a freshman, King Miller. He actually looks pretty good, which isn't shocking that USC's deep with skill position players. But yeah, the offensive line is hobbled for USC, and they're very thin at running back. So injuries is kind of the lead talking point there for USC offensively. And check this out. We've seen USC, most of those injuries happened in the Michigan game. We've seen USC play 2 games since all these injuries happened. The offense has not looked the same at all. Just 22.5 points per game, 39.2% success rate. Those are not great looking offensive numbers. So in the 2 games they've played since the injuries, the offense has not looked good. One of those games was against Nebraska, whose defense has been struggling all year. So there's concerns here for USC offensively. Now, both those games were on the road at South Bend and in Lincoln. So we know USC plays better offensively at home on the West Coast. So maybe now they're back at home, the injuries don't mean as much, but I think it's a concern, all those injuries to the offense. And We can't just sleep on this Northwestern defense, by the way. This team is playing some defense. In their last 3 games, they're allowing 16.3 points per game, 5.22 yards per play. Now, their linebacker, Karlaftis, that's the Chiefs' edge rusher's little brother, he's out for the year. That's one of their main linebackers. He's been out. He's not coming back. But cornerback Josh Fusel, he just came back for the Nebraska game. He missed a few. Their other corner, Adai, he should be back for this one as well. He missed the Nebraska game. Safety Damon Walters should also be back. He hasn't played since week 3. So 3 contributors to the Northwestern secondary back for this one, including 2 of their top 3 corners. So not only is Northwestern playing great defense right now, but they're also healthier. So I know it sounds crazy, the idea of taking Northwestern's defense to go out on the West Coast and stop the SoCal offense, but I think they're able to generate some stops in this game. Now, again, I do want to point out they're now back at home. And I mean, their last 2 home games against Michigan State and Michigan, they averaged over 7.7 yards per play, 38 points per game. So, I mean, we're talking about Friday night at USC. So just keep in mind, this is a spot where USC typically goes nuts. I'm just saying these 2 last home games against Michigan State and Michigan, these were before the injuries. So it comes down to, hey, does USC's offense get right Friday night at home, even with the injuries? Or are these injuries too much to overcome for this USC offense? I think Northwestern's defense is pretty good, and I do think they're able to generate some stops. Check this out. So Jaden Mayava has excellent numbers against the blitz, but Northwestern's defense doesn't blitz much. They're actually able to generate some pressure without blitzing. Mayava struggled under pressure with a hobbled offensive line. Maybe Northwestern's able to put some pressure on him. Remember, they're also missing their top 2 running backs. I mean, I really think there's a path to Northwestern generating some stops on the road at USC on a Friday night, which sounds crazy. If you've been a college football fan for years, that sounds crazy. I think there's a path for it. Now, on the other side of the ball, what do we think about Northwestern's offense against USC's defense? Because Preston Stone, primetime Friday night at USC, not exactly a spot I'd love to back him. Seems like a spot where he'd throw 3 interceptions if you followed Preston Stone's career. But what has this USC defense struggled with this year? Getting off the field against the run, 128th in success rate per rush. And look at their last 5 games. They're allowing over 176 yards per game, 4.91 yards per carry, 50.2% success rate per rush. Teams are handing the ball off against USC, and USC cannot get them off the field. That's exactly what Northwestern does. They run the ball efficiently. They stay on the field. They've done a pretty good job of it, and they seem to be improving as the year goes on. I think Northwestern can run the ball in this game. I think they can play some defense. I think this number should be like 12.5, 13. 14.5, I want to do it. Northwestern plus 14.5. I already know the comments are going to hate this one. Northwestern on the road in SoCal on Friday night. Give me Northwestern plus 14.5. I'm doing it. Thanks for watching. Live shows at midnight Eastern time as always. If you're able to make it, would love to see you in the comments. Yeah, talk to y'all tomorrow.